Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 24th episode of the Ask Me Anything show on Ink42. I'm Ankita from Ink42, and this is the show where we see industry leaders answering the most riveting questions around the current business and startup landscape. On today's show, we have one such guest, Mr. Nath Parameshwaran, who's the Director Corporate Affairs for PayPal India. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, thank you, Ankita. I'm very glad to be here.
Welcome again. So if we talk about digital payments, they're set to grow to $1 trillion by 2023. And the world over, PayPal has been a harbinger in digital payments, and the company continues to redefine this in many ways. In today's AMA, we're going to talk about India's digital payment landscape, an industry of which Mr. Nath has been a veteran for over 2 decades. And we're also going to understand how PayPal is helping Indian SMEs, entrepreneurs, and freelancers with its ever innovative suite of products and solutions to simplify payments. Before we begin, as always, please drop your questions for Mr. Nath in the comment section below, and we'll take them up soon. So Mr. Nath, if we talk about digital payments, we've come a very long way, since paper money and physical coins to plastic cards, net banking, and digital wallets today. You've been part of this ecosystem since it was offline till today, which, where it's heavily digital. Please tell us about your journey of being in the payments sector for over 2 decades.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ankita, for this kind introduction. Happy to be here again. I would say that the time when I started off, we had a pocket, but never the money. Okay, so there was no money as students or as just out of college trying to find work. The concept of pocket money wasn't there. So what we saw, but in the playing out in the market was paper in the form of cash, and then paper and money in the form of a check. These were the two predominant instruments that we encountered. And guess what, 2019 cash is still around. It's a resilient foe, and that's where it is. But in between, what has happened is, as you would all know, we started with cash, then moved to paper, which was checks, right? Then moved to cards or plastic as a way. Started with debit cards, then went into credit card, a bit of net banking. Then this whole wave started in the last 5 years of going digital in a true sense. We had the wallets, we have the UPI, we have got fund transfer, the entire spectrum that we could imagine. So it is fascinating to see what has only changed is the form, and it's moving from cash to digital. It's an absolutely fascinating experience, and the speed at which it has moved. It's completely transformed India and also the whole world.
Amongst all the instruments, UPI has obviously been a game changer. So, what is the one instrument that you're most bullish for?
I wouldn't say that one instrument, okay? I think what is I'm bullish is about the ecosystem that has got created with the spectrum of choice that's available to the user, which is very important in any country, and in particular for a country like India. It's also something that we really drive through globally. Choice for the users, both for them to make the payments and receive. So number two is the ecosystem that has evolved, which supports this kind of spread of digital payments, whether it has been the government or the infrastructure set up by NPCI and the private players who have all kind of created this. So that would be my thing. But a personal fear, if I take a history and go back, like I said, we started with cash and check. We didn't have much to play around. So the first one was a debit card, and it was fascinating to go to an ATM, and we call it anytime money. So it was fascinating to put this plastic in and it cuffs the cash out. Then the second experience I had was, I'm sure even today that's very relevant with youngsters. We were never eligible for a credit card. But when I joined my first employer, they were kind enough to give me a corporate credit card, and that was issued to me in '98, and I still have it. So it's fascinating of how your experience starts, and you still recall those first experiences of digital payment.
Were you ever skeptical in using a credit card? Because, there was always a lot of apprehension around using things which weren't cash, because cash being the favorite.
The beauty about credit card was, it changed your behavior as a, average Indian to spend within what you have, whereas this gave you an opportunity to kind of, make higher value purchases, and a fascinating thing that you don't have to pay it now, but pay later. So that allowed you to really, go for a little bit more aspirational purchases. And it also gave you the freedom of not having to walk around. I used to travel a lot, so not the fear of losing cash or it getting stolen, or those kind of things. So it was a very fascinating experience to be handed over a card when you're pretty young. The fascinating piece here is not just again the form factor, it is how it starts to change your behavior.
Absolutely. I think it's still the same. I don't think that particular feeling towards a credit card has honestly changed in the last 10 or 20 years.
Yes, but India is very different. We still have about 40 million credit cards only. But what has really taken off is number of digital payment methods like debit cards, and now you have got UPI, now you have got wallets, and that has really driven the spends here as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I was coming to that, that though we're talking so much about digital payments, 85% of transactions in India are still conducted in cash. Having said that, we can't deny how digital payments is changing the ecosystem today, is going to change the consumer behavior, business behavior even tomorrow. So how do you see the industry riding the wave of this 360-degree change in payments systems that we see today?
See, and I would put it that an idea whose time has come, it is irreversible, right? Whether it is the digital economy or digital payments. Okay, this is the only way forward, and it has got some significant benefits. So against cash, right? Cash continues to be a resilient foe. I said, from childhood we are habituated with cash, and that will continue to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, the transition to digital payments is happening at a fast clip. So while check is slowing down, cash usage is still prevalent. If you see the growth rate in digital payments, it's very, very fast, right? Very high, double-digit growth year on year. And the population that's adapting starts top down. You have got the bank customers first using, then the youngsters come in and start to use it. And then slowly it percolates down to the rest of the country. And the infrastructure that's been laid down provides an absolute great foundation for us to, I would say, lift off uh, from where we are today to the next orbit here in terms of digital payments.
Mm-hmm.
Though it's still 10 to 12% of the overall pie, but it's still growing pretty fast. But I think we should also be realistic that not many large economies from the around the world have been able to make truly cashless. And that's why I must compliment the government or the regulators. They have got a realistic vision, which they say less cash society. So we will have cash, but we'll also have a very fast and a very large share of digital payments.
Sure. In fact, even the Reserve Bank of India has recently set up a committee to encourage digitization of payments. So what is the kind of impact that you see of this ecosystem, specifically talking about, businesses and freelancers?
So firstly, if you look at it, it has to be a change in behavior, and payments has to become an habit. So we have a large number of people who have come to the digital payments fold, and we have to, as an industry, make sure that they are feeling secure about it and they stay on it. Now, the one of the key drivers of digital payments is, I may have a lot of payment methods, but if I don't have a place to pay for it, how does it help?
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to the merchant side. And on the merchant side, we have got these two constituents: the freelancers and then the SMEs. These two put together, constitute a very, very large base of small businesses in India. These are people who have the aspiration, who have the resources, and what they're trying to do is create a career and a living out of it. And maybe they're small today, but they can really become large businesses in the future. So for them, how do they reach out as a small business to an entire population within the country or across the world? So digital payments, platforms like PayPal, that's where we are focused on helping the small business to really drive accept digital payments around the world or from India and really grow their business. What also happens is as soon as they start accepting digital payments, it starts to percolate into the ecosystem much faster. Uh, so, so from our aspect, these two have a huge role to play in terms of playing an important role in digital adoption in the country, coupled with digital literacy and awareness on the consumer side as well, and making sure that both these constituents, whether it is the consumer or the freelancer and MSME, they feel secure about paying and getting paid.
That's where I think has been the biggest concern for freelancers, getting paid in time. And with this plethora of digital payment options, that's sort of obviously easing out. What are your thoughts on the payments ecosystem for freelancers?
I would say ever than before, I think they have a plethora of options. For example, with PayPal, today they can sell, they make their IT services available to an entire global audience as well as to an Indian audience with one solution. And now once they get used to it, they've also got other options to figure out, how quickly they can, get their payments in. For the freelancer, the challenge always has been, how does he get his customer to trust him? Okay, his customer has not even seen him. Number two, he has to receive timely payments for his work, right? Number three, the need for his payments is very quick and instant, because he needs to maybe purchase some software, he has got a new assignment waiting, or he has to subcontract some of that work. So unless he gets this money fast and quickly, how is he going to really run his business and scale? So those are the aspects that we are focusing on. And if you are talking about competition in our sector, I think it's good that the freelancer has a lot of choice. He should try out different methods, look at what works for him best based on his needs, and stick to the one that really provides him the security, the speed, and an access to both local and global markets. And there will be problems in once in a while, and you should be able to actually call up somebody and say that I had a problem with this payment. So those are the kind of things that you should be looking at. And competition for us, it's like gravity, it is everywhere. Not only the service provider, but even the freelancer is competing with his peers on a global scale, and that makes all of us work extra hard. In our case, we try to work really extra hard to make sure the freelancer gets what he desires from our payment platforms, and his business, when it's successful, it's also good for us. So I would say the ecosystem is good, and again goes back to the choice, and it makes all of us work very hard to get the freelancers business. And the same holds true for the SME as well. The SME, we are just differentiating, he's actually sending goods from India to the whole world, or he may want to tap into a local audience. So the same holds true for him as well. So we are trying to be kind of voice of the SME, voice of the freelancer, in wherever possible, small way. Take the issues up with the government or with the regulators. Work with their industry as well to develop an ecosystem where they can thrive. This is a very important aspect for us. It's a passion, and we continue to kind of strive and do our best every day.
We've been talking about freelancing in a big way, even on Inc. 42 with the webinar series that we've been running, the rising freelance economy. What is the kind of rise that you've seen in freelancers from when you started to now, considering you even mentioned that, this is a very important sector for PayPal as such. So what's the kind of change that you've seen? How many people do you see really being okay with taking on freelancing? Because somewhere, some people still worry about the fact that freelancing isn't taken so seriously.
I think this is a great question, Ankita. We are now working in a knowledge economy, and where a 9 to 5 job is kind of changing, right? The whole concept. I know that the freelancers have this thing that it's a part-time job, and whether it is sustainable. But the world is changing very fast. Number one, I would say that the freelancers from India, out of every four freelancers in the world, at least one is from India. Number two, the quality of work which they deliver globally is among the best, which they also command some of the highest fees in the industry. Number four, they have a very inherent advantage of English speaking skills, especially in the IT search engine optimization. So
Mhm.
there's already a very good halo effect around it. And if you come to the personal side of things, you are your own boss, right? It's not 9 to 5. You choose your working hours, right? You can decide which clients you want to deliver the work to, and where you cannot. I envy some of them because they are off. Some of them actually take a 3 month sabbatical and come back and say they want to do this, and in that meantime find their passion, do something. My simple take on here is, you are good at something, and if that is your passion for good work, there is always demand. And also look at from the enterprise side. Earlier they were delivering work to small companies. Now big companies see value in specialized skills and want to outsource work to freelancers as well. So I would say the runway is very very big, very long. The opportunity is big. Follow your passion. There is an ecosystem out there, platforms like PayPal to kind of assist you in a small way. Just go for it.
You said you envy them. Have you ever delved in freelancing? Will we ever see you doing that in the future?
Only if somebody thinks that I can do some value added work. But I go back to my days out of college. I was an entrepreneur, did a fabulous run for 2 years, and I cut my teeth in sort of a ITS industry before accidentally getting into payments. So I can relate a bit in terms of how they feel like when you start off. And we totally support, and we back them up all the way.
Sure. And, do you think they can also add to, align with the agenda of the government to, where job creation is a big one?
Where do you see? Not many countries you can see where the prime minister goes in and says that be a job creator and a job instead of a job seeker, right? So freelancers and the MSMEs are creating jobs. What we have seen is a fascinating development. So we have got freelancers and small SMEs who just sell one service and one product. Once the business picks up, now there's so much work coming that they need to now employ other freelancers or other supply chain in the case of manufacturing or goods. So suddenly from a small business, this job create is starting to become a bigger business, and is actually creating jobs for others. So a job creator not only for himself but also for others. So freelancers and SMEs have an important role to play. And if you see, India recognizes there's a huge number of initiatives recently launched by the government to support SMEs, offer them credit. You have the Mudra scheme, loans in 59 minutes, um, a lot of special dispensations that are available. Slowly but surely, the ecosystem is recognizing the role and the contribution of the small business. So I think there are tailwinds here. I must also add that what we are also fascinatingly seeing is women entrepreneurs on the rise. Okay, for them this is a perfect fit. Um, in many cases, they want to manage the family as well as drive their follow their passion and their interest. They find that this is a great way to kind of start off. Once they feel that they are really good at it, then depending on what their choices are, get back to a proper make a career out of it as well. So this is empowerment, job creation, a sort of wealth creation, and generating exports for the country. There's a huge potential all around.
Absolutely. I mean, it's more about empowerment today, than just being on your own or, being the master of your work in one sense. So, we've discussed this with PayPal several times. You've mentioned a little bit, but I would like you to specify, and talk about how PayPal is empowering freelancers and Indian micro and small businesses with the kind of products that you have.
Our platform, right from our ethos when PayPal started off, is kind of built around helping the small business succeed and the freelancers succeed, right? To us, they are a very important community. So there are three or four things that we bring to them. The number one is an ready customer base of users around the world, right? It's about 250 million plus users. Now, there are people who trust PayPal. They don't know who the Indian freelancer is or the SME is. So we help them succeed. Number two, we help them succeed then profit from it. Simple link on the chat. Sometimes where freelancer or the SME is not having to bear this charges against such incidents that happen. So all in all, we are trying to make sure that as a payment platform, we help him succeed. Number two, we are only in the business of payments. We are not into getting into his business or getting into what he does. So we are more like a partner and complementing him rather than trying to compete with him. So if he succeeds, then we succeed. So that's the philosophy under which we operate.
Mr. Nath, we had a little bit of a technical glitch there. I would want us to discuss this once again. And, I'm going to repeat my question, which was basically how PayPal is empowering the Indian micro and small businesses and freelancers with the products that you have.
Okay. Is it okay now? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Perfect.
Okay. So, like I said, we bring in four things, right? First is any freelancer wants to access a global market. Okay. Now, what he needs is users who can trust parting with their payment for the services he delivers, or the SME when he sells the goods. So, what PayPal is a trusted payment platform across the world, 200 countries, 250 million plus users. They don't know the freelancer or the SME. So we come in and say that you trust PayPal. We will make sure that the money goes to this SME and the products or the service get delivered to you. So we act as a trust mark between the two. And what the SME now has or the freelancer has is an access to a global consumer base. Number two is we make sure to for the freelancer, in addition to users, is that ability to receive the payment fast. Remember what I said initially. The freelancer and the SMEs need the money first, okay, because they have to pay and be in business. Cash flow is more important than profit for them. So we give the money as quickly as possible into their bank account. Okay, number three is that we protect them in most cases against frauds or other issues that they might encounter in very few cases in the international market, right? And we have so that boosts the confidence for the freelancer as well. And the fourth part is we also do a lot of work in the ecosystem to not only educate the freelancers or the SMEs, but we also take their issues with the government or the regulators through appropriate forums and say that these are the issues the community is facing. Okay, so hey, Mr. Government, hey, Mr. Regulator, can you please help out? Okay, and in most cases, because of the value the government and the regulators see, we are open and they're happy to help out. B2B Ankita?
Yes, Mr. Nath, I can hear you.
Gave the four or five things that we do for the SME and the freelancers here.
All right, and if you talk about the Indian markets for PayPal, the focus has increased in the last 2 years. On November 8, 2017, the domestic payments arm, PayPal Payments Private Limited, was launched, while in October last year, PayPal for Business was launched. Can you tell us about the progress of both since and the plans of such products in the future?
Yeah, so again, it's a very exciting new chapter for us to be able to offer our services in the domestic market. Okay, and it complements what we are doing on the cross-border side, helping the SMEs and the freelancers. We want to bring the PayPal's capabilities about secure payments processing, offer buyer and seller protection, and offer the same global capabilities that we have to the Indian market as well. And we are here for a short while. So if you compare India's journey into digital payments, but the response has been pretty fascinating. Uh, so on the business side, merchants have come back, freelancers, SMEs have come back and said, now this is great because now I can use PayPal not only to sell and get paid internationally, but I can also now tap into the domestic market and use the same PayPal integration and the capabilities to also receive payments against the domestic sales that they have. So we are learning. We are bringing our products based on the feedback that we are getting from the users, tweaking our processes, our products, and our services so that the Indian user, whether it's a merchant or the consumers, continue to benefit from our capabilities. But we want to work with the Indian users, and we want to work with the Indian users. We have a lot of expertise globally, but we want to come and execute it locally in terms of what it makes sense to the Indian freelancer, Indian SME, and the Indian merchants and the Indian consumer.
All right, so with that, it's time to move on to the questions from the audiences. And the first one is coming in from Varan. He's asking, PayPal's India unit recorded a 12-fold increase in revenues for the financial year 2018. What are the primary factors driving this growth for PayPal in India?
Varun, it's a great question. The thing that we decided was, have the right setup in India to be able to serve our users from an Indian setup, so that we are one close to our users. Number two, listen to their feedback, and number three, respond and customize our services for the Indian users. And the Indian entity both provides a cross-border service as well as the domestic service, and like I said, it is reflected in the numbers that has been out there in the public website. So we are very happy with the growth and the numbers. And what is very important here is that you will know this, and any businessman knows this. It's only when you make money, a little bit reasonable profits, that you can hire the best talent, reinvest in your business, make sure the operation service all grow very well. So that's the approach that we have taken, and it's reflected in the financials as well.
All right, so Samir is asking, what do you think will the paperless payments be in the next 5 years, purely from an Indian perspective?
So again, a fantastic question, right? Next 5 years. First, let's look at the great foundation that's already established. Very few places around the world that we operate in, we see that you have the tailwinds of regulators and governments wanting to drive digital payments. Number two, you have got an infrastructure which is for public good. An example we could take is the infrastructure laid out by NPCI with the help of RBI and the banks and the non-banks, and it allows entrepreneurs, new startups to come in and leverage of that infrastructure and offer solutions to the users. I would say that the evolution in India, it will be a combination of a revolution and an evolution. Okay, evolution in the sense that the behavioral change will happen much slower. Okay, the revolution will be on the technology side, startups coming in, players like us coming in and looking at how we can solve for use cases and drive adoption of payments into various verticals. uh, so so the tailwinds will continue. The real revolution will come from the tech side, from small startups. Number three, I would say that you will also see this penetration happening into the far corners of India, given the better connectivity, the digital India program seeping into the villages, towns of India. We have some issues to fix there in terms of infrastructure, but if you look at 5 years, India moves slowly but surely. It will reach a stage where you will have a reasonable, predictable bandwidth available, both on the mobile telephony and hopefully on the cable networks or the broadband, and that will drive the next wave of penetration as well coming in. And at the end of 5 years, it's very hard to crystal gaze. I would also say that payments will increasingly becoming invisible and part of an infrastructure itself, right? It would reduce the friction. Security will get handled in the background, and it will be just another activity that you would be doing. But the principles are not going to change, in the sense that you are not going to first wake up and do a payment. You will still have a need to fulfill, to pay your bills, or buy something new which is a want. Or you may be traveling through the metros that are getting laid out in India and pass through very seamlessly through those toll gates. So those are the kind of things we see this evolving into an infrastructure that will reside in the background. uh, it will offer convenience, it will reduce friction, and it will get into a phase of asking for credentials in a more smart way, only based on the risk activity or the type of payment that you are doing. So that's where I see this evolving into a space within India. And of course, we also see that all the learnings that are happening in India, there will be several companies, including like PayPal, will use these learnings and apply it in so many other markets elsewhere. India is fascinating because the learnings here are to be able to operate in a very resource constrained environment, constrained bandwidth, a little bit of um, no friction in the system. We can learn from all this and replicate in many parts of the world.
You mentioned the word rural India and how internet is seeping in there. This is very interesting. I want to understand from you, how do you think the rural India, the villages, are really seeing this change in payments, even though it may be limiting right now with the way they interact. But having said that, all the same, it's seeping in.
I think sitting in the cities, okay, and reading the English newspaper, it is very hard to really appreciate the impact of what digital India or digital is having on our friends and brothers in the rural part of India, or what typically people call as Bharat. It is an absolutely an enabling environment for them, and commerce will drive it. Financial services will drive it as incomes go on. Uh, the aspirations of the people in those locations to sit in a small town or village and order the stuff from a Mumbai large website, and then it gets delivered pretty quickly, right? And he has already paid it by digital, whether it is a browser on a phone or a browser on a pad, or from a wallet, from his app. Uh, so they are absolutely empowered, they're absolutely aspirational, and it is just growing. The next wave of growth, absolutely all of us know, is coming from those small cities and towns. And but like I said, we have to be realistic. The infrastructure and the rollout that happens there is a bit slower than we would like, but we will eventually get there.
Any specific focus for PayPal over there in that area?
Ankita, we have just started our journey, starting with cross border. Now we have launched a domestic service. Of course, we have plans for the long term. Right now, our focus is to do what we are good at, serve the constituents who are using us, learn from them. And as we learn, we would start to, expand our services, not in terms of the bread, but also in terms of, regionally or into the rural parts of India, you know, in a very staggered, phased approach.
Sure. So the next question is from Shivam, and he's asking, the company also said that it is aiming to serve the small and medium scale industries in cities and in smaller towns. Could you please highlight your plans to achieve the same?
So we already serve the SMEs and the freelancers from about 1,500 cities. Okay. So, and many of them or most of them use our services to sell their services or goods cross border. Okay. And like I said, the other proposition already is that the same payment method is available if they want to also sell to their domestic users. So the offering is already there. And it's a question of whether the small business there is wanting to go in that direction, and what is the strategy they approach, whether it's through their website or they want to attach to a marketplace. That's how they drive it. And as a payment option, we are already available for them.
Sure. The next question is from Dipen, and he's asking, how is the government's data protection bill going to affect PayPal in India?
So let me first understand. Ankita, you have to help me. Are you referring to the draft National Data Protection and Privacy Bill?
Yes.
Okay. See, that's a great question. Okay. Now we are all Indian users sitting in India. The digital economy is growing very fast. The government is doing the right thing by taking these steps to protect the data privacy and the data protection aspects for an Indian user. So it's an absolutely welcome step. And having a legislation to cover all our Indian users' interest is a step in the right direction. Okay. As far as PayPal is concerned, we operate in 200 countries over last 2 decades. For us, we don't see this as a burden, but actually it's a responsibility that is cast on us by the user to say that, hey, PayPal, I give you the data for this purpose and we expect you to protect it. So we see it as our fiduciary responsibility to do it. And in many jurisdictions that we operate, whether it is Europe, which has a very evolved privacy law like GDPR, or in the Asian countries, we comply and we have the experience of how to translate that into an implementation and comply with the Indian laws. Once it becomes passes through a legislative system and becomes a law. So I would say that as Indians, we should support it and and welcome this step. Of course, when it comes to implementations, the government has started a very robust consultation process on this. And how do we best implement it? Which one protects the Indian user and it also allows the companies to operate with their models, right? And it is not just about the foreign companies, or equally about Indian companies in terms of a culture of privacy and data protection setting in. I am pretty sure that the consultation process that have happened till date and what will happen in the future will allow us to arrive at a very balanced set of practical implementable guidelines.
All right. So with that, we've come to the end of this AMA session. Thank you so much, Mr. Nath, for joining us and for all your insights today.
Thank you, Ankita. I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for organizing this. I hope the listeners found something useful, and look forward to such sessions in the future as well. Thanks a lot.
Sure. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. If you have any more questions for Mr. Nath, you can leave them in the comment section below and we will address them soon after. Thanks once again. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.